Hello there. Today's sedate drop and intro brought to you by Spotify's auto normalization feature.
Hey! We're recording the podcast! Shut up!
Good morning to you wherever you are, because it is
Morning Somewhere!
for July 9th, 2024. My name is Bernie Burns. Sitting right over there, being kept down by the digital man, is Ashley. Shh, Ashley, be quiet. We're being normalized.
Don't want to be normal.
We're being auto-normied. More on that in a second. We have been, there's been a change in the matrix, Ashley, and something has happened to the volume on our podcast. But first, marital issues.
Oh boy.
So first of all, Ashley's not a little bit under the weather today. So
Yeah, I'm dual wielding coffee and lem sips. So bear with me.
I think when Ashley is sick and not feeling well, this would be a great time to talk about an issue I've got in our shared relationship environment. No. May I?
All right, here we go.
So Ash and I have what I would describe as a volatile situation that we've set up for ourselves, where we share a work computer.
Oh yeah, that is a dangerous situation.
If you've ever had to do that with anybody else, you know that's a tough thing.
We're living on the edge.
To break it down, I have the computer up till about 11:30. When I finish editing the podcast, I turn it over to Ashley, and she does all of her social media posts and gets it out to forums and things like that.
Link
does all the
dumps.
graphics and things like that. Link dumps, yeah. So one of the applications that Ashley uses for her work is an application that I like to call Photoshop. I have a question about that app for you, Ashley.
Okay.
Do you know that you can close Photoshop? Do you know that that's a feature of the program, that you can go to File and Exit? Or there's a little X in the top right corner, and you can just close it. Every time I get on the computer to use it for what is very difficult work, in my opinion, there is this app open, Photoshop, and about 1 billion windows. And I go to close it, and it goes, all of these windows are unsaved. Do you want to lose this other person's work? And I'm like, oh my God. So I had to go through and save all these files individually in like a temporary folder. And some of them are just like black squares. Like you just, or there was one the other day that was just an ampersand. That's what the image was. It was just, you had typed an ampersand.
You're welcome.
What? So just in the future, just so you know, you can close the Photoshop app.
Oh, look, this coming from the guy who didn't know that just leaving the game Raft running would run up his Steam playtime.
Why does it work like that? Okay, so
Because the
I didn't
game
know
is
that.
running.
But I'm not playing the game. Okay, so this is something Ashley revealed to me.
You think that Steam is just sitting there spying on you, being like, well, he hasn't moved his mouse in a while. He's not actually playing. Let's not count that.
They're big tech. That's what they do.
You're running the game. You're a big boy. It's running the game. It's counting it.
So we were playing, Finn and I were playing Raft, and he went to bed. So I just like left it open on the main menu screen, and I just left it running. I guess the computer would sleep at some point.
You know, Bernie, I don't know. Did you know that you can just close it? You know, there's a little X in the top right.
Listen, sister, if you go to close Raft, it doesn't go, there's an unsaved Raft. Do you want to save? Or there's not 800 of them.
Are you sure you want to abandon your raft? The shark might get sad.
So I was disappointed by this because I didn't know it was running up my playtime. The main menu, you're not playing the main menu.
But you've got
but
the
I get
game
it.
running.
I get it. It makes sense. It makes sense that they're going to keep the tally going while the thing is open. It did solve a lifelong mystery I've had as well, which is how the hell did I play 2,000 hours of PUBG?
You used to leave that game running all the time.
Right, but I know I didn't play 2,000 hours. I played a lot of PUBG, but I didn't play 2,000 hours.
And
but
you didn't think to yourself, how could this be artificially inflated? Maybe the fact that I'd never close it would have something to do with that.
No, I was just embarrassed by my playtime. Honestly, now I'm not. The shame is gone. What a weight off my chest. Also, why can't I just modify that? Why can't I just knock that down if I want to, right? Why? There's so many like metrics that these software apps hold for you. And it's like, I know that's not right. Can I just please modify that or remove that?
Even if they wouldn't accept modification, which I get because Steam has like, you know, their Steam reviews and they're like, oh, this person's
And
played this
refunds.
many hours. They gave it a thumbs up or thumbs down. That does matter. I feel like you'll be like, this person has 2,000 hours in PUBG and said thumbs down.
Not worth it.
Wouldn't play. No, but at the very least, I would like the option to say just remove this from my like play history. I've got a couple of those games that I left running, where I'd stop playing the game, alt tab, do something else, and then come back a couple days later, and I have this artificially inflated playtime, and I'm like, no, not that. Now it's messing up my Steam algorithm. They're like, we think you would like all these games. No, I wouldn't.
It's my data, right?
Yeah,
it is mine.
I'd like to just point to that one and go, no, not that.
I'm not going to be
that one.
testifying in court about my playtime on PUBG, right? I'm not hiding anything from prosecutors here.
Not yet.
Same thing with achievements on Xbox. You can't, like, if I get one achievement in a game, I'm like, now this is in my history forever, and I've got only a 2% completion on this game. It's like, just let me get rid of it. Let me get rid of it.
Yeah, just let me say, no, not that.
The big one for me is we use these Apple Watches for, like, fitness stuff. And at some point, because I didn't turn off the workout when I left the gym, I have a 4-hour workout for weightlifting and I got my record for that. It gave me a little medal for it, achievement, basically.
Yeah, you're looking pretty swell, bro.
Thanks. I didn't work out for 4 hours, but now it's all like my personal record is 4 hours. It's like, I know that's not true, and I've deleted the workout, but the achievement stays there. It's like, let me delete it. I'm sure they'll understand when I go to the Olympic trials for weightlifting. That I deleted this data and was trying to hide something. Apple.
That's how they're going to start recruiting. They're going to look through and see who has like the best Apple workouts, and they're going to contact you and say, are you ready to serve your country for the Olympics?
This guy's got 4 hours in the fucking gym, bro. He knows what he's doing. So we're kind of dealing with that right now for the podcast. Like, it's not quite the same thing, but there's been some change on Spotify specifically. So if you have noticed a weirdness with the volume of this podcast in relation especially to other podcasts, something changed about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, which for most podcasts would be an episode. But for us, it's been like 7 episodes where the volume of ours has been lowered through a feature that the subreddit users diagnosed as the auto normalization setting on Spotify. You can go disable that in settings if you want to, but we're investigating right now because it's our job. Like, we can't have people going out and modifying all their settings for our podcast. So we're trying to figure out what the normalization is. We think you had a good theory about why.
My theory is that it maybe has something to do with all the screaming at the beginning of the podcast, that Spotify just goes, oh, this is a loud one, and just then turns the whole podcast down. I don't know if it samples just the first couple seconds, whatever. So we are working on that. We're trying to figure it out. But so far, not a huge fan of this auto normalization feature. It's like the motion smoothing of podcasts.
We need Tom Cruise to show up in his Top Gun flight gear and tell us to turn off auto normalization on Spotify. How that's hurting the industry and the art form. I always admired that. Like, that was on, I think, one of the Mission Impossible home video releases. And Tom Cruise, who was on a totally different movie on Top Gun at that point in time, went out of his way to make a PSA and say, turn off auto smoothing on your television because it's the bane of our existence as filmmakers.
Yep, I get it. And I mean, Spotify's been changing a lot of things there. They also recently removed, or at least I don't see it anymore. We had the option in podcasts to add like a little Q&A or a little poll.
Yeah.
And they were kind of fun. And we just do like a silly, ask a silly question and get some silly answers. And
interaction?
Yes. And that's now gone. I still see the option to make polls, but the option to just like ask a question and get freeform answers has disappeared. I don't know if Spotify just decided that not enough people were using it, or it just like wasn't worth all the tech trouble. I'm not really sure, but they have been changing a couple things with the platform.
And those comments were really valuable to us because that's how we found out about the latest crypto coins, how to make $10,000 a week working at home, people's links in their bios. Those are really cool. It actually mirrors a big current event that's taking place right now, where the platform Crunchyroll, big anime platform, they have turned off comments across everything.
Yeah,
they're off.
They like flipped the switch, and that includes removing all their legacy comments. So comments over like a decade ago, but they, I guess, just decided that comments weren't adding enough to the platform anymore, that they just weren't worth having. If you remember, Bernie, Netflix once had comments.
I don't remember that at all.
This was quite a while ago, but they removed theirs some time ago. Now Crunchyroll has removed theirs. as far as I understand, Crunchyrolls weren't really moderated anyway. So what happens when you have fully unmoderated comments, as anyone who's ever seen a YouTube video can attest, they kind of become a cesspool.
Moderation is a really interesting thing because when moderation happens, it's always a lot of short-term pain. People get really pissed off. If somebody's comment is moderated or removed, they take it very, very personally. I've seen it happen lots of times. Like I've seen people not be able to walk it off, basically. There's a lot of things where it's like, they just take it on as their personal challenge to take things down.
This is now my crusade.
Crusade. Great word. Great word. I get it. But at the same time, when moderation goes away, it's way worse. You know what I mean? Things just turn into an absolute cesspool.
Well, I mean, and like you said, you end up with a lot of spam, and then you end up with so you have these spam bots spamming, and then you have like moderation bots moderating the spam bots, and it's like, oh, come on, where are we now?
Also, like in particular on Reddit, I feel like if you have like some kind of brand out there, I feel like you have an obligation to moderate, to try to help shape the community. We've witnessed things personally where we weren't responsible for a portion of a community that was interacting. And then suddenly when that community got out of control, it didn't matter. It fell back on the brand anyway. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Or there's the other version, which you see a lot in like a lot of the podcasting subreddits. It starts as a community, grows to this big thing, but it's not moderated or officially affiliated with the actual podcast. And then it just turns into people who hate the thing. And if you go into like almost any major podcast and go into their subreddit, it's like, oh, this is the place where everyone hates this thing.
You know where I see that a lot is a lot of like comedian subreddits. Is like you go into a comedian subreddit, it's just all about like how we hate the comedian, and I'm like, why are you there?
Well, that's huge crossover now, right? The big Venn diagram overlap.
I guess that's very true.
Comedians and podcasts. Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. Man, I remember there was a year when you were running the No at Rooster Teeth, where you had your laptop open at dinner every single day for a year, and you were just moderating YouTube comments all dinner long. I remember that very specifically.
Yeah, it was a lot. And it always feels like never enough.
Yeah.
So I can see why Crunchyroll would be like, this isn't worth it to us these days.
And also, it's like, it's weird because it's like, it's specific to the internet. Like, you don't feel like you should be able to watch a TV show and then post your comments in the end credits. You know what I mean? Like, at some point in the internet's history, it was probably a news site. Some developer put up a text box, an open white field. And somebody asked, what's that for? He said, oh, well, that's for people to leave comments. You know, maybe they have a comment about the article.
Like maybe they have a thought.
And that was the default from that point in time. You know, we never really thought about it. But now we're entering an era with changes in technology, just changes in the way people approach interaction in general, where now we see a lot of platforms moving away from comments. And oddly enough, the negativity I read associated with this was people on Reddit saying, I don't want to have to come to Reddit. It's like, here you are, you're on Reddit. It's like they didn't want to feel like they were forced to come to Facebook and Reddit to have any kind of discussion. Like, that's the only places where discussions happen. You know?
Yeah, but I can also see if platforms have a lot of they have a lot more data than we do about their own platform.
Yeah.
And we'll have probably a better idea as to whether those comments are hurting or helping the performance of that platform.
It is a weird thing when you turn off comments, you don't hear the feedback, right? Suddenly it's gone. And it's like, you don't know if it's a huge negative. You can just watch the numbers and see if it hurts people watching stuff. I don't think it will. You know what I mean? But suddenly there's a lot less interaction that's taking place. If you're not driving ads, do you really care about that? If it's all just subscription service, all you do is watch that top line number and that's it.
Yeah. Speaking of top line numbers, just really quick, I know that as a Furiosa podcast, we have a responsibility to discuss Furiosa and Furiosa's top line numbers. And I just know this is a good news one, Bernie. I just want to give a shout out to Furiosa, which hit streaming super fast. It hit streaming like home VOD or whatever they're calling it now, where you can pay $20 to watch it at home, a couple weeks after.
I would just call it home video. You don't call that home video?
I mean, it's home video on demand, yes. Yeah. But it hit it I want to say last week of June, topped iTunes charts.
Really?
So people did not turn up to see this movie in theaters, but they are watching it at home.
But Ashley, how are the comments? That's the important thing. Yeah, and while we're on entertainment news, probably won't talk about it too much because it's boring business stuff, but Skydance and Paramount now have officially merged. And this story makes me kind of giggle because I worked as on the business side of entertainment for a really long period of time. So totally makes sense to me why this happened. But I wonder how many media mergers happen today where people are reading about it. They're like, who acquired who? What? Because you hear about Warner Brothers and Discovery, and you're like, Discovery? And now you hear about Paramount and Skydance. I'm sure most people are like, Skydance? What? Why are they acquiring Paramount or taking over Paramount?
Yeah, and it's an interesting one. You're going to see more of the sort of tech analysis of the platform as well. As I understand it, Skydance kind of wanted a streaming platform, and they're getting Paramount, and of course Paramount's whole library as well. But it's interesting that their initial comments after the merger were all about how they're going to be really leaning into tech, modifying the algorithm and so on to try to get people watching more things. You like this, then you're going to like this, and get more of that behavioral analysis and just modifying the algorithm. They're going to add comments.
They're going to give you the opportunity to make $10,000 a week. Just check the link in the bio.
Oh, and look
for
at this.
Skydance.
What is this? Auto normalization? Interesting.
You're just giving me agita. One more thing we have to... You get to a point where it's when we first started, we were only on Spotify, right? And then we branched out to other things. There's a reason for that. It's because these things come up and then you're chasing all these things all the time. Somebody somewhere in some department just flips a little toggle and suddenly you're spending a week trying to figure out what the fuck happened, Yeah. And you're chasing that stuff.
Yeah. So it's, it's a tricky thing. And Spotify is a tricky beast.
And next thing you know, Tom Cruise is showing up in his Top Gun wardrobe, and you got to have a whole conversation about it and everything like that. It's a tough world.
Let's see if we can get Tom Cruise on to do an audio PSA about auto normalization.
You know who should be hiring Tom Cruise to do PSAs is Boeing.
Oh my God. There's so they have pled guilty, or are pleading guilty to with this U.S. Justice Department investigation.
I want to say, as we are talking about this right now in our time, it is actually not a done deal.
Okay,
so it's not for sure yet.
But the idea being that they are planning to plead guilty to fraud in the probe that I think we discussed this last week, that they were now liable for some plane crashes that happened a few years ago that they previously had immunity for, but then they violated their immunity agreement with the U.S. government and therefore were liable for these and are now planning to plead guilty. And so far it sounds like they're going to be settling. So there's going to be it's just what they're getting is a fine, essentially, of $240 some odd million.
And in an interesting ruling, Boeing, the company, will have a felony conviction, which is fascinating to me.
It's so weird. How do you have a company with a felony? What does that mean?
What does the mugshot look
there?
like?
Right.
It's a picture of a plane, right? And everybody posted everywhere going, ooh, gotcha. But one of the things that's actually holding this up is the victims' families, people who died, their families want specifically executives to face charges, and they want Boeing to pay a massive fine. So
understandable.
Understandable. Once you have families of the victim, that's a bad category of people to have coming after you.
Yes.
Always.
And honestly, $240 million is a lot of money. For Boeing, it's not that much money.
Yeah.
For that's, we talk every now and again about fines and the cost of doing business. And that seems very much like the cost of doing business for Boeing.
Have you ever heard the saying that a fine means legal for wealthy people?
Yes.
Yeah. It's kind of that thing. What is expensive for Boeing is a very long public trial where all these horrible things continue to be said about Boeing. They want to avoid that. $250 million to get out of that PR is well worth the money.
Yeah.
More than they could ever spend on positive PR after the fact.
Yeah, this way they can clear the runway, as it were, so that we can now discuss things like the investigation into Boeing for the failure of air masks to deploy. What is this? Interesting.
I know, right? It's another headline about them in general. So, I take it back. Tom Cruise, stay the hell away from me. I was reading about some plane that recently had to make an emergency landing, and my first thought was, I wonder who made the aircraft.
Yeah, it's poisoned. Boeing is absolute poison in the minds of a lot of people. It's not stopping people from traveling, I should note. In fact, I believe the TSA announced that this past weekend they set a new single day record for security screenings. They screened more than 3 million travelers at airport security in a single day. So, people are still traveling. But that thought is in the back of everyone's head, right? And I would assume that Boeing is the majority of planes that people are flying on.
Hearing about 3 million people going through airport security immediately just makes my stomach turn. It really does. It's just like the worst situation. And to hear about 3 million people going through. It's crazy. It's nice to set records, and it's nice that we have recovered from like when no one was traveling during COVID.
Yes, but people are also, I think, making up for a lot of lost time.
That's true.
There's a lot of people who weren't able to travel for several years who are now making sure that they get those experiences in. So I absolutely get it. It's one of those things that on an individual basis is like, yep, of course.
Well, since we're talking about current events and things like that, in sports news, the Euros are now headed into the semifinals. It's going to be Netherlands versus England playing tonight. Spain will be playing France tomorrow. And then the winner of those two games will face off in the championship this weekend. So we are coming down to the wire.
All right.
And the good news is if you're not a football fan, this is the point in time where they don't allow there to be draws. So if you're going to have a tie game, there will be a shootout and there will be a specific winner. I don't think people understand just how much Americans hate ties. They hate them.
No, there's got to be a winner.
Got to be a winner.
Got to be a winner, got to be a loser.
Or in the case of yours, got to be a loser. There's this article going around about a guy in Scotland who is so spiteful against England. And that's completely a thing here, by the way. When we go to the pub, it's not hyperbole to say people are probably there to root against England more than they're there, or as much as they're there to root for Scotland.
Yeah, so who did you say they're playing?
They're playing Netherlands.
Netherlands. So now, you'll go to the pub in Scotland, everyone's cheering for the Netherlands.
Oh, they will during that match, absolutely. But there's a guy in Scotland who has been flying outside of his house the flag of the nation that is playing England next. And I saw a meme, total spite. And I saw a meme, the distracted boyfriend who's looking back at the other girl.
Yeah.
And it's the girlfriend is wanting England to lose, but he's looking back at secretly wanting England to win their match so that they can lose at a higher stakes match.
Oh, that's like the next level spite.
That's like 14 layers of spite. Personally, I don't like that. I really don't. I'm not going to root against anybody. There was a person that I knew when I was younger, and we went to a Super Bowl party, and let's say it was, I don't know, Dallas versus the Patriots, right? And we were in a Dallas place, so she decided she was going to root against the Cowboys and root for the Patriots because everyone there was rooting for the Cowboys. I'm like, don't do this. There's no reason for you to do that. Either the Cowboys are going to win and you're going to get mad because everyone's making fun of you, or you're going to be the asshole at the party who's rooting for the one team that beat their team.
Right.
Yeah, just don't do it. Just go with the flow, man. Have fun.
Yeah, I feel like the Scotland
sports.
cheering for anyone but England team is it's all that fun ribbing that you get. It can cross a line and get into some real spite, right? And it's one of those things that, as we've discussed before, you can only do things ironically or funsy. You're still doing them.
That's a great way to put it. All right. Well, anything else going on in the world today? Anyone we should thank for this podcast?
There is someone, in fact. We should thank Andrew Knight and Talon for sponsoring this episode of Morning Somewhere at patreon.com/Morning Somewhere. Thank you both for sponsoring this episode of our show.
All right. And that does it for us today. I will be back hopefully with a special guest, I think tomorrow, Ashley.
Perhaps.
So you'll have the day off.
Hooray for me.
But I will be back to talk to you tomorrow. I hope you'll be here as well.
Bye, everybody.